It's a cruel summer, leaving me here on my own. It's a cruel summer, now we're gone. The city is crowded, my friends are away, and I'm on my own. It's too hard to handle, so I gotta get up and go. It's a cruel summer, leaving me here on my own. It's a cruel summer, now you're gone. You're not the only one. It's a cruel summer, leaving me here on my own. It's a cruel.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Monday Night Jaws. How's everybody doing out there, man? I gotta say, this was an interesting watch because I haven't seen this movie in 20 years, over 20 years. I mean, this is just not a movie that I go back to, but I gotta say, some interesting stuff in this one, and we're gonna be going through all of it. Like, nobody really covers Jaws 2. I don't know why, but I'm gonna be covering Jaws 2. A lot of detail about Jaws 2. So, before I get started on all that, how's everybody doing? How's everybody's summer? Is it technically summer yet? I don't know. It's close to summer. But it's 90, or it was 95 degrees today with the heat index of 102. It's supposed to be 99 at some point this week. I hate Kentucky. I hate this weather. It's all pretty bad. But anyway, we're going to be talking a lot of Jaws tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So, if you watched the last episode, we talked about Steven Spielberg's classic, the original Jaws, 1975. And this is the 1978 sequel. It was inevitable. The original Jaws made over $400 million. It was inevitable that they're going to do a sequel. So, before I get started talking about how all that came to be, let's see who we got in here, man. We've got, this is great, Scott's Wrestling Collection, Shark, yep, and Ghostface 320, ShamWow. Jared Struppler says, good evening, dickheads. Good evening to you, dickhead. The Carolina Chupacabra, what the fuck is this shark's problem? Yeah, we'll get to that. Macboy Colors in here, Pop's in here. How you doing, man? It's good to see you. Movie Junkie John. Open Wide. So, see, that's something else about this movie that we're going to get into in pretty good detail. Jaws 2 covers all the beats of the original Jaws, just not nearly as well. We'll get into that here in a minute. Macboy Color. Devin Graham's talking about doing this. Texas History. Cancel 1965. The Mayor's here. Hell yeah. Stuntman Mark's here. Jack Frost is here. He's got some esoteric kind of questions. I'm positive. Sharks have been around for over 450 million years. That sounds about like what he would say. Well, it says that purple Halloween shirt from Walmart is so soft. Yes, I love this shirt. Joe Jack says, I don't know. Howdy, Uncle Bill. Jaws 2 was just a cash in, right? I remember it being boring. Well, we will get to all that and more. Um, I'll just say it right now, though. Uh, unless you're an insane person, if you would like to co-host on this stream, you let me know. You can let me know by sending me a message on here. You can let me know by sending me a message on Instagram. Because I'm just going to start talking. And if I get something, I get something. And if I don't, I don't. And this is a perfect place to start, though. So Wes says, how come Spielberg didn't do the sequel? Was he uppity back then? So, Jaws makes $450 million. Spielberg's famous. Of course, they want to do a sequel. Zanuck and Brown, who are the producers, want to get together and they want to do a sequel. They want to get Spielberg back. That's the only thing that makes any sense, right? Spielberg absolutely fucking hates the idea of doing a sequel to this movie. Detests it. He says that sequels are cheap, they're cash ins, that there's nothing to them, and he has absolutely no interest in doing it. So there was that part of it where he just absolutely refused to do it, which I'm imagining that the company probably offered him pretty substantial amount of money and profit. I mean, for God's sake, they gave Roy Scheider like $500,000 and like a percentage of the profits that the movie made. So he probably ended up making, in the millions to do Jaws 2. And Roy Scheider is no Steven Spielberg. Let's just be clear on that. And there's also the idea too that Spielberg had said that he would have done Jaws 2 if not for the fact that he had such a piss poor time on the original Jaws, with the mechanical failures and all that, and that he hated the idea of doing sequels. So, I guess at that time, he probably had a lot more, what's the word, dignity and respect for himself than he would 30 or 40 years later. But regardless, they are going to make a Jaws 2, they being Zanuck and Brown. And so they decide to go and try to find themselves a writer and a director for Jaws 2, because the general rule of thumb in sequels is this, but if you think about it, in 1978, sequels really weren't that much of a thing yet. I think that one of the producers had said that the kind of template that they had for this were the Planet of the Apes movies. Like that was one of the only movies at that period of time that had like a bunch of sequels. So sequels weren't in vogue until the 80s really, and people kind of looked down on them at that time as well. So, nobody really wants to do something like this except for the producers, because that's a shit ton of money. But the normal kind of saying is that a sequel makes about half of what the original makes of like a huge blockbuster movie, usually. At that time, anyway. And Jaws 2, which was released in June 16th. Are you shitting me? It was released like this week of 1978 on a budget of $20 million, makes $208 million, which is almost exactly half of what the original Jaws makes. Which is pretty much par for the course on this too. So Zanuck and Brown, they go out and they find, trying to find a couple people that will make this movie, and they stumble upon a guy that would try to write the film, which is Howard Sackler, who is not really known for a heck of a lot at that point in time, but he wants to make a prequel of the film based on the sinking of the Indianapolis, which I think would have been a fucking amazing film. But, that's not where they want to go with it, so they pass it off. They end up getting Carl Gottlieb to come back on to write the film, who was the same guy that kind of punched up the original script. And they settle for a director by the name of John Hancock. And I believe at that time, Hancock's only experience was like um, plays or theater or something like that. Maybe one film or something. Anyway, he's quickly fired, and they bring on another guy that Gottlieb had worked for or worked with, and that the guy Joe Alves who would direct part three, which we're getting to next week, actually knew this guy, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but it's Gene Swark, who's the guy that eventually ended up directing Jaws 2. Now, Gene Swark's idea for this movie was probably the single dumbest idea that I've ever heard. He's got a little teeny bit of like logic that goes behind it, but still yet this is one of the stupidest moves ever for a sequel. And in my opinion, why this movie fails. See, I struggle to say it fails. It doesn't really fail. It's just not, I don't know. Okay. But the idea that he came up with was to show the shark as much as humanly possible. The problem with that is that the shark in this fucking movie looks worse than the shark in the original Jaws. So all the sharks that were used in the original Jaws have basically decayed by this point, okay? They've been out in some studio backlot somewhere. They can't use any of them. So they hire a new guy, and he creates 3 new molds of the shark. But for some reason, these sharks look extremely shitty. Like, just more plastic and more like obviously plastic than the first film. And even like the fourth film. I think I even like the Jaws, from the fourth film more than this. It legitimately looks like it's on a hinge. Like when it opens its mouth and things like that, like just the way that the head is, like it looks like you can almost see where the hinge is for the jaw, that they just, overflapped a piece of plastic on it. It's just goddamn awful. Anyway. So where was I? So anyway, yeah, the guy takes over to be the director. And aside from having the single worst idea in movie sequel history for showing the shark, is because his reasoning was that they already, when the shark came out of the water in the first film, you already saw it, so the surprise was gone. So you might as well just show it as much as humanly possible, which I think is kind of bullshit. I think he probably showed it as much as humanly possible because he thought that's what everybody wanted to see, like all the audience wanted to see. But that kind of actually destroys some of the mystery of the films. So there's a lot of comments going by at the same time here. Okay. Let's see here. The ending of the movie is wild. Yeah. Yeah. Now here's my Joe Jack says that the Indianapolis prequel idea would be awesome. I would love to have seen that particular movie. And I even read somewhere that Robert Shaw was helping like write the script, or he was going to like write like some of the dialogue and things like that in it if they did that particular movie, but they never did. Gene Snitsky says it wasn't his fault. It's fair enough, Gene. This is the best way to sum up this movie. Jaws 2 is the sequel that isn't even so bad it's good. Yep. Carded Redemption says it was filmed in Navarre, Florida. I'm actually here now. Yes, it was. So, originally a lot of the scenes from the towns was filmed back in Martha's Vineyard, but when this dickwad took over, Jeanette Swartsky or whatever his name is, he filmed it in Florida. So that's where you see a lot of the water scenes from the movie. So moving forward, then the director goes upon casting the film. So Roy Scheider abso-freaking-lutely does not want to do Jaws 2. He does not have any interest in Jaws 2. And he makes a great point in that he says, nobody will want to see me in Jaws 2. They're going to be watching the shark. Like, that's the only thing that they're going to be paying any attention to, which is 100% true. Like, nobody, and I'm sure even in 1978, went into Jaws 2 to see fucking Roy Scheider. They went into Jaws 2 to see a shark kill a bunch of people. But, that being said, this movie has a great climax. All this bullshit that I'm talking right now, and by the way, I defy you to tell me anything interesting that happens in the first half of this movie. Do you want to know what happens in the first half of this movie? They're dedicating a hotel. That takes up about 30 minutes. The mayor doesn't believe that the shark is back. Well, no shit. We've already been through all that. And a bunch of kids go sailing. That's like the first hour. This movie's 2 hours long for some reason. And that's the first hour of the movie. Ridiculous. Nothing even remotely exciting really happens in this movie until about an hour and 30 minutes into it. So there's that too. Garrett, I love Jaws 2 as well. I'm talking a whole bunch of shit about it right now, but we're going to get to the good parts. Yeah. All I remember is the ending. There's a reason why all you remember is the ending. Because there's not shit happens in the first half of this movie. So Roy Scheider, as I said, does not want to make this film. However, Roy Scheider does want to make a shit ton of money, and Roy Scheider does want to get out of his contract. So he can leave his contract with, I'm assuming it's Universal, and he had like a 3 or 4 picture deal, I can't remember which, and they will let him out of the contract if he agrees to do Jaws 2. And so he's like, all right, I want to be done with all this shit and go make Sorcerer, which was an awesome fucking movie, but yet again, I'm not really sure when Sorcerer came out, come think of it. I'm assuming it was after Jaws 2. Another movie that Roy Scheider could not carry, by the way. It's a great movie, but Roy Scheider can't carry a movie. Anyway, he makes this movie. He gets $500,000. He gets a percentage of the profits, and he gets out of his contract. So that's all for the better. The director brings back the ancillary character, the sheriff's deputy, who I can't remember his name, and that becomes a character in the film that wasn't written into the film. So the big basis of Jaws 2 is this. Instead of, 3 guys go out to sea, they're hunting a shark and things like that, the ending of this movie, and basically the whole kind of plot around it, is sailing. Oh yeah. This movie's got a shit ton of sailing in it. It's so heavy on sailing that if I gave a shit of anything about sailing, or even knew anybody that owned a sailboat, or we had like a place to sail, I'd probably be creaming in my pants about this movie, because that's 60% of the movie. So, all the teenagers in the film, including Mike, who, has grown up, go sailing. I don't even know. It's just sailing. It's not yachting or anything. They're just on these tiny little ass sailboats. And so that sets up the ending of the film, basically. Yeah. So the I took some notes as I was watching the film, just because I'd been 20 years since I've seen this, so I just wanted to kind of like some things that stood out in the film as I was watching it, and I'll run through these in a second. But the basic plot of the film, that was more written by Carl Gottlieb than the first film, and they had to find some reason to bring a shark back into this, and they had to find some cast, since they couldn't get Dreyfuss, and of course Shaw's dead, so they had to find an adventure theme for this movie, so it wouldn't be too dark and too disturbing and things like that, because they wanted to catch a particularly young audience to ensure that this movie made money. So the adventure theme in this is sailing with a bunch of teenagers, and so film starts off. They're back at Amity, and Brody, still the sheriff, and they're building a new hotel on the beach, and things are going great, and he's doing great, and yada yada yada, and there's no conflicts or anything yet. A couple of, I guess they're like marine photographers are out, and they're taking pictures. And I always thought this was a cool gimmick in this movie, by the way, though. I mean, I'm not saying that the first part of the movie worked, but I think this particular part of the movie worked, which is they're taking photographs, the shark attacks, and so eventually Brody finds the camera, and he doesn't really believe that there's a shark up until that point, and then he has the film developed, and when he has the film developed, there's like a huge eye, like the side of the shark's face, and like a giant, like, doll eye, so to speak, that he sees, and that's when he knows, like, that's when it clicks, like, that there's a shark. But anyway, before all that, before he even sees the photograph or anything like that, he's just, and this part kills me because there's a whole lot of character development in this movie with, Lorraine Gray, Mrs. Brody, who's working for this sleazeball now, who you can clearly tell like wants to get with her, and there's a conflict there with him and Chief Brody that you don't give a shit about, and there's the mayor's back, which I cannot for the life. I was watching this and I was like, so, after everything that happened before, this guy comes, Chief Brody comes back to him, and he's like, hey, we got like another shark and a big fucking problem, and like here's some photographs, here's some photographic evidence, and he's like, nope, no, I swear to God, there's a line where he's like, don't push it this time, Brody, or something like that. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I wish I could remember exactly what he says, but it's something like that, like don't push it this time or don't bring it up this time. It's like he brought it up last time because all these people were getting eaten, and he was right. And the whole thing was like a huge embarrassment for you, and like a bunch of people died, and you don't remember the smack and all that. Anyway, I didn't understand that. I don't understand the mayor's reaction to any of this stuff in this movie. Because it's like he clearly knows that this shit's happened before. And I don't know. Another cool part of the movie is it's just basically a setup to have. There's no real continuous narrative in this movie like there was the first one. It's just basically action sequences and death sequences, almost like a slasher film. So one of the really cool parts of the film is when like they've got a I almost said skateboarder, but it's definitely not a skateboarder. They've got a boat, and it's not a surfer. What do they call them fuckers? Water skier. Yeah. And she's being pulled by this boat, and it's like a speedboat. And the way that they filmed this was really, really cool too. So you see her kind of going around, and you see the fin come up behind her, and then it's like racing along beside of her. Now, there's not a part of me that really believes that a great white shark could keep up with a speedboat, or that it would even try to keep up with a speedboat. But that's what happens. And you can see, like, there's a cool underneath shot where you see, the skis, and then, from below, and you can see the shark falling. And then, this is another fucking hilarious part in this movie. So it eats the skier, which was fine. And then it attacks the boat where, this tiny little boat. And I swear to God, there's a scene. And I'm watching this, like, I'm trying to, be like, what did they tell her to do exactly? The shark hits the boat, and she picks up a gas can. The woman that's in the boat picks up a gas can. And the shark is hitting the boat, and she literally is like turns it up and like pours it on herself, and then just like throws it down. And I'm like, was she trying to? Is she trying to commit suicide in the worst possible way, or are they trying to say that it like knocked like? But why was she holding the fucking thing up to begin with? And if you're holding it, she's holding it up like this, and then she just dumps it on her head. So she pours gasoline on the shark and the boat and herself, and shoots a flare gun, and blows the shark up. And then the shark has like this giant scar down the side of its head, which would be cool if not for the fact that the shark just looks like complete shit throughout this whole movie. And like, I don't think the scar really helped it. I mean, it was a cool idea, but it even looks more fake if that's possible, like with the scar. But anyway, so we'll pause right there, because we're getting ready to get into the best part of the movie by far, which is the end of the movie. The second act or third act, I'm not sure which. So let's read some comments. So, they should have brought back Quint as a ghost coming back for revenge. They really needed somebody in this movie to kind of balance out. It's way too like Brody heavy, both Brody heavies. Said, didn't Jeanette Swark take over from another director? Yeah, that's what I was talking about. John Hancock was that guy's name. He apparently was like an inexperienced dipshit and just kind of got fired. Snitsky says these Jaws movies are pussies compared to that Lion movie. That's true. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anything more hardcore than that Lion movie. Uh-oh. Gotta get rid of these pussy bots real quick. Hold on. So TJ Freezy says great whites can get up to like 35 miles per hour in short bursts. I could see that, I guess. But, I mean, it wasn't really a short burst, though. They followed this chick around for like 10 minutes. Yep, the squirting sex bots. Scott says, women, the woman in the boat was trying to douse the shark with the gasoline. The same thing happened in Cruel Jaws. Yeah, it's just, you gotta watch that scene to see how funny it is, because it's clearly just like, kind of like, you know, when Andre the Giant would like put the snake around himself and like just, you know, kind of just hold it like there. Like, she's clearly just, you know, trying to dump a bunch of gasoline on her head purposely. It just looks ridiculous. That shark did have jets in its ass. Like, there's no other way that shark keeps up. I'll tell you something else I noticed right about this time in the movie, too. There really wasn't a lot of John Williams' score. Not the iconic, you know, da 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 part of the score. Like, I was like, where the fuck is that? Like, it's really noticeably absent from this movie. And it's like, y'all realize that made, like, the first film 1,000 times better. But the music in this film is definitely not as good as the first one. And I think maybe, I haven't watched Jaws 3 yet. I'll be watching that one soon. But I'm going to assume that they probably went real super heavy on the John Williams score in Jaws 3 probably after this. So, yeah, so the second half of the movie is probably what everybody remembers. It is what I remembered. I mean, it's 100% like, I could remember pretty much everything that happens once the kids get to the lighthouse in this movie. I struggle with anything else before that, but okay. So, Brody realizes what's going on and nobody will listen to him. As a matter of fact, in this one, they actually like strip him of his job and he's not the chief anymore or whatever because they don't believe him, and he's up on like a shark tower and he scares the piss out of all the people thinking that there's a shark coming, so they all vote to get rid of him. And so he finds out that all these kids are going sailing. One of them is Mike, so he has to go find them, and they take a boat. Probably like my favorite scene in this movie, because it's actually really well acted. There's a scene where like two of the teenage characters, Eddie and the woman who I can't remember her name, Tina or probably or something like that, are in this tiny little boat and they're making out whatever, and then the Jaws comes up, hits the side of the boat, knocks him out, and then like pushes him. This is a really cool shot. Like grabs him and like you see like from a back shot, like a back one shot, that he pushes him up to the boat where she's at, and then like he's kind of like hanging on the side of the boat, and then like he rips the side of the boat off and goes under. And I thought that was really, really well done. And then she's kind of a mess after that. Throughout the whole movie, she kind of plays the, Barbara character from Night of the Living Dead. She's just kind of in a ball huddling and talking about the shark and whatever. So, the rest of the teenagers are all out separately in all these different boats. And that's when it really gets good. Because like one by one, Jaws kind of picks off like a bunch of these teens. And there's a really, really another horrifying shot too, where one of the teens is like trying to climb up on a capsized boat, and Jaws comes up behind her and kind of just like the head of it comes up and just kind of comes down, and all you see is like her and then the shark kind of coming up and down, and then she's gone. I was watching a documentary about it, which they achieved that by kind of like they had the shark come up and then somebody just kind of from below her like a diver grabbed her legs and pulled her underneath at the same time the shark came up. So all you see is like her and then she's gone and then the shark comes down. So, all of that part is amazing. You see a lot of the shark, and that it is pretty like, it's pretty bad. I'm not going to lie. Like, I mean, they really did show the shark as much as they possibly could. Which is not at all good in this, because like a good portion of the time you can really, really tell that it's fake. Some of the underwater shots that they did with, where you can't see the whole shark like up are fine, but like when it goes up on top of boats and stuff, you're like, wow, that looks like the shit they used to have at Universal. Like it really does, like the little thing that came up at Universal. So anyway, Brody gets there, the shark's eating a couple teens. The shark is kind of like just swimming around this lighthouse, and they can't go anywhere. And so I think it's very reminiscent of like later films that would come along, or later films are kind of reminiscent of this, where like The Shallows and ones like that, where you can't get off of this little island because the shark is kind of just floating around there. And there's some really good stuff of the shark destroying, these boats and things like that, these little sailboats. And so Brody comes up, and he's trying to help out all the kids. Oh, and I should say, I got cheap fuck dates. Hold on one second. You just can't get rid of cheap fuck dates when you need to. There's no whores, by the way, but there are cheap fuck dates. So, Lord, the fuck dates threw me. Where was I at? Oh, yeah. So Brody comes up, and to preface this, there's a scene where like he's dragging waters and they're trying to find out if there's a shark or not, and he drags and pulls up this electrical cord, which I honestly would have no idea that electrical like power lines existed under the ocean. So I'm glad that they kind of put that foreshadowing in there. And later on, he's in this little tiny boat, and like one of the electrical cords comes up and is exposed. And I don't think this would work. It didn't look like it would work, but somehow in the editing process they made it work, because the shark in this movie is like, its mouth is like 3 or 4 times longer than the power line is. So imagine like Brody's like holding this power line like this, and the power line looks like it's about, I don't know, in diameter, probably 10 inches or something like that. He's holding it like this. And this fucking huge shark is coming up, like straight ahead at him. And then, trying to eat him, and snaps into the power line. And that's the image that you saw at the beginning of this video. There's just the shark like exploding and catching on fire. Which, that's a really cool scene, and that's actually like, I mean, if you can think of a way to kill a shark, that's like one of the better ways to go about it. I'm just not sure how accurate that would be. I would feel like that it would bite into the power line, yes, but probably also like rip off Chief Brody's head at the same time, because he's just there, with it. Anyway. And then, that's basically the end. The shark has exploded and been fried to death. And there you go. Oh, shit. I didn't know that was you, Jay. So Jay says, don't know why it's not showing my name. Saw it at the Mahia Theater. Got the soundtrack somewhere. Only remember the ending. Remember folks hammering on the seats in front of them with their empty drink cups like Brody on the power line. That's kick-ass. Yeah, so there's a scene he's trying to attract the shark, to come over, to get away from the boats, and he's like hammering on the side of the power line with a boat oar. And I guess that they were hammering like with their cups too. I've got to imagine that, I mean, it was at that time, people were really, really into this movie, and probably, oh shit, I was going to say probably marked out for a lot of the things in it. I completely forgot about like one of the best scenes in the movie, which I would have marked out for, kind of did mark out for it, in this, in rewatching it, which is, there is a scene where Brody calls for a helicopter to come down and help like pull all the kids in their sailboats, out of this particular part of the ocean and someplace safe. So the smallest fucking helicopter that you've ever seen comes out, lands in the ocean, and this was actually pretty good, because you just don't think that this is going to happen. Like, and I remember watching this when I was a kid and kind of being freaked out by it, because it's just out of nowhere. So the guy's on the helicopter and he's sitting there, and they're getting ready to. He's inside the helicopter, and all of a sudden, just from like, you can see from like kind of behind him, this shark comes up and like latches onto the side of the helicopter on the landing pad part. Starts like chewing it up and flips the helicopter upside down to where it's kind of just floating there, and then it just sinks. And so that was, yeah, I mean, nobody really saw that coming, because I don't, the first time a shark had really attacked anything like that, but they've ripped that off like 1,000 different times now, and like these Sharknado and shark whatever. There's always some crazy ass thing that the shark ends up eating or toppling or something like that. Yeah, so Jay, I don't know, man. Like, if you want to get on here, you actually screen this damn movie in the theater. If you want to get on here and talk about how the screening went, that would be fucking awesome. I will send you a link. I think I can send you a link. Hold on. Can I send you a link if you're a Facebook user? I'm sure I can figure this out. Positive of it. Anyway, on Instagram, that'd be probably easier than this. Hit me up on Instagram, Jay, and I will send you this link real quick. So, the shark is completely demolished. What do? I wish I knew. Oh, yeah. Send it to him. All right, so Wes is going to send it to you, and then we'll get this shit going. Let's get some of these comments, because there's a shit ton of them, too. Okay. Jaws 3 is going to be great. A lot of people on here are talking about Jaws 3. I also haven't seen that movie in forever. I remember that there's a chick in it that looks exactly like Frances McDormand, but I don't think it's Frances McDormand. And I know Randy Quaid and Lou Gossett are in it for some reason, which I think the only other thing Lou Gossett Jr. I've seen him in is like, wasn't he in Iron Eagle? But anyway. Apollo says, the shark looks really pasty and leathery in this movie. It's Tammy the T-Rex. It does. It looks really like... So I would imagine if you are something that lives in the ocean, that you should look wet. But this fucking shark is constantly just looks like plastic. Just like an action figure. Like somebody made a giant action figure, which I guess they did. Alright, so now I got Jay on here. I want to add him to the stream. There we go. How you doing, Jay?
Oh, I'm okay. You know, and truly, I was maybe 13 years old when this came out. Jaws is my all-time favorite movie, but I had said to Wes that it's pretty much the perfect movie, the original to me, as far as it's funny and it's scary and it's exciting and it's a little touching in places, and it's pretty much the perfect all-around movie for me, the first movie.
Yeah.
So of course, I had to see Jaws 2 when it came out at the old beat-up Mahia Theater, and I think I was 13 maybe, and you know, I guess I thought it was okay. It was a disappointment, of course. It didn't come near measuring up to the original, you know. And that's the only thing really I remember is that ending. Now, you brought up some scenes here that sparked my memory, you know, the sailing bits and of course the woman on the skis, you know, that gets eaten up, you know, early in the movie. So that brings back some memories, but it's that ending, that beating on that power line and screaming at it.
Yeah, I mean, the movie only ever gets really memorable in the last maybe like 20 minutes. I mean, I really struggled to remember anything else about it when I rewatched it, you know, up until that ending.
And he's screaming something at the shark, and he's like, come on, or something like
Well,
that.
that's the other part of it. Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, like this movie hits every like note of the first film, right? So, and what I mean by that is,
instead of die, you son of a bitch, it's, you know.
Yeah, it's something else like that. It's like, come on, I've got something for you to eat or something like that. You know what I mean? So he's trying to, they're trying to copy that. So there's all the way through the movie, it does the same shit. So basically you got, you know, the shark comes along, nobody believes Brody. He goes to the mayor, he tells the mayor doesn't believe him. He fires him because he doesn't believe him. He gets drunk, like that scene from Jaws when he gets drunk. He gets drunk, and there's another scene of him getting drunk. Like, it just beat by beat, it goes through all of the things that made the first film, you know, work in Brody's art.
And you brought this up, that by far, that's one of the stupider elements of the movie is how the mayor reacts after going through everything that they went through in the original movie. And, you know, when the mayor finally, you know, signs the order to close the beach in the beginning after, you know, people get the kid gets eaten up and all that, you know, he finally gives in. And after all that happens in the original movie, to go through the same bullshit and fighting Brody over this, you know, this next shark, you know, and like he did in the original.
I think the only reason for that was because they were just like, we need to cover all the bases, like hit everything that the first film did, because people are familiar with it. We need to do it again.
And then that pretty much was the mentality of sequels, particularly during that time, is just to hit the same points as the original. What made the original so successful? We got to hit those same points. Basically, retell the same story, which what
Which
can
you can definitely tell it here too throughout this whole movie. I'm just like, I'm watching it, and it's trying to be Jaws really, really hard. It just never, because for one thing, it desperately needs Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss. Like, it needs somebody else besides Roy Scheider. Like, he just cannot carry this movie. And I don't know if I've ever seen a movie where he did carry it. Where he was able to successfully kind of be like one of the main star of the film. But it was not this movie, unfortunately.
And you could tell even then. I mean, of course, like I'm old. I'm 56, so I saw it in the theater when it came out. But I could tell even as a kid. I remember actually feeling sorry for Roy Scheider being in that movie
I
because,
think, yeah.
and you could, of course there was no internet or anything, but you would read things like Starlog and things like that, and they would be little bits and pieces. And I knew even back then this was a movie really he didn't want to make, but because you brought this up because of what the contracts or whatever movies that he wanted to make, he had to make Jaws too.
Yeah.
And he didn't really want to do it, and you can just sort of feel it watching the movie.
You really can. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's like his performance in this movie too is just so, like, he just sense that he's pissed.
He's angry. He's angry.
Movie.
He's pissed off in the whole movie, and really, what he's pissed off about is that he has to be in Jaws too.
yeah. I mean,
he's just a ball of anger energy through the whole movie. He's screaming and yelling and pissed, and finally he yells at the shark.
But his whole character, like, just being kind of like the lighthearted, kind of endearing character that he was in the first film. In the second one, he just seems like a fucking unhinged maniac, kind of just angry, like, guy throughout the whole thing. And you come to find out.
What was the line? It's in the trailer or something like that. You better do something about this one because I'm not going through that hell again or whatever was that line.
Yeah. It's like,
and he's pretty much that way through the whole movie. It's not just that one line. He's pretty much the whole movie just screaming and yelling and just this, clenched fists. And
he starts off at a 10 and then just stays at a 10 throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
And then you come to find out, though, and when I was reading about this movie, that part of that too is because him and the director literally got into a fist fight during the course of making this movie. Like, they hated each other, and it came to blows, and it had to be kind of resolved by the producers, and for him to finish the movie. But you can just sense that in this movie. Like, he just does not in any way seem happy throughout the whole part of this movie.
And you look at performances later that I put in All That Jazz or something like that. Such good performances, such nuanced performances, and really good. But in this one, he's like you say, he's just pissed off, and he's pissed off that he has to be in this movie.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
And I came in late, so I didn't hear what you had said about it. But what was the story, if you could just say it real quick, about the original director with that Gina Swak or whatever his name is that took over?
The original guy was a guy by the name of John Hancock.
Yeah, I remember that name. But
from what I can gather, he had pretty much only done like theater and maybe like a couple of films at that point. And he just kind of got overwhelmed by kind of the size of the movie to the point where the producers replaced him because it was pretty clear he was kind of drowning, with the weight of that big of a budget movie. And I think that one of the guys, that Joe Alves that would go on to direct Part 3, knew that the director that would take over the movie. And that's kind of how that all went down. But it's just going back and watching it. I don't know how long it's been since you've seen it, Jay, but
Long time.
it's. I was thinking for me, it's been probably over like 20 years, or close to 20 years, probably. Going back and watching it, I was. Everybody describes this movie as like kind of like the average Jaws movie. Like it's not great and it's not as horrible as like 3 or 4. It's just kind of there, and that's kind of the way that I felt about it. I felt like the first half was piss poor and kind of boring. All the stuff that the character stuff that they tried to do with Brody and his wife and that was just awful. But once you get to the second half where they're actually like doing the action sequences, you can kind of see that the guy knew more what he was doing with that.
Well, and it's something that I'll watch again. I mean, is it showing on any of the streaming services or
I just watched it on Vudu because
Oh.
I had it on Vudu, but I'm not sure what like if it's on any streams or anything like that. But
And I think I bought the vinyl soundtrack back in the day, and I think I
Yeah.
still have it somewhere. And, John Williams did it, which I was surprised that they was able to get, John Williams to do the actual sequel also. Um, and was it, I wonder, was it a completely original soundtrack or did they maybe take some tracks from maybe stuff that he did for Jaws, the original Jaws or some other,
well, here's the thing that I was talking about too. It didn't seem like it was the same. There wasn't a lot or any that I really noticed. Kind of think of it of the the classic kind of like da da build up kind of shit. There was just a lot of the more when they get out on the sea and it's that kind of more like piratey,
yeah.
jaunty kind of stuff. There's more of that, but like the classic kind of stuff, it just didn't. It didn't show up a lot in this movie, which I
Yeah.
think was a huge kind of drawback to this one too. And I wanted to like this movie a lot more. I thought, well, time will be kind to this movie, and it's just not. It's not very good. It's not a very good movie.
Well, that's what
So
I remember just even back then is that it was serviceable. I didn't have a terrible time. I didn't walk out just hating it.
yeah,
And of course, like you say, the ending. It's a cool ending. Although, if the shark is going to get electrocuted, do you think Brody would have gotten electrocuted too, being in water, of course?
well, there was a
Would have taken
lot.
him down also.
There's a lot wrong with that final like scene. Like
But
he should have gotten either eaten
yeah.
along with that little tiny line, or like electrocuted, like you said, like
It
something.
brought up how bad the shark looked, and that big giant jaw, that big mouth. And,
Yes, and it just
and-
looks so mechanical. Like that. That's what I was talking
yeah.
about. Like in the first one, it seemed like it was at least a little more like sleek. But this one, they built the head up so fucking big that you can just tell it's made out of plastic. Like it's got a hinge on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
just too. It's too kind of stilted looking. If
Yeah.
that's over. But Wes wants to share with you that it is on Prime. I did not know that, but Jaws 2 is currently
Okay.
streaming on Prime.
Yeah, I've got that.
So, I mean, I would encourage people to go back and watch it just for the second half. I'd probably tell you to fast forward like everything up until the point where the skier gets attacked because
Well, I do remember at the very beginning, you get the boat underwater. It's tracking in the water, and you get the old boat.
Yeah.
That sunk, the original boat. So you get a little cameo
yeah.
by the orca.
And I was saying earlier too that I did think that it was a cool kind of a gimmick or whatever that the photographer takes the picture and then later on it gets developed and then it shows just like the eye
Yeah,
of the shark and that's how Brody knows the
yeah.
shark's back.
I do remember that now.
Yeah, but then like he takes it into the fucking mayor, and the mayor's like, "No, that's not a shark." It's like, dude, you've been through this. Like yeah, none of that made any sense. But some observations that I made, Jay, while I was watching the movie, and I just took some notes because some of it, I don't know, some of it didn't gel with me here. But Yeah, so here's my observation. So showing the shark, making the decision to show the shark was the worst decision that they made.
Well,
I
because you
think
said because the effect is so bad, because
yes.
and that was the thing that was spoken about, particularly by Spielberg about the original, is that the original shark looked bad, but he developed the technique of barely showing the actual mechanical shark, and showing POV shots and showing because he had to work around this defective effect. He he made this fantastic film that's really tense and really scary, and you hardly ever see the shark. You know, just
Hmm.
very you know select moments and real flat. And of course you know, and when you do see it, the effect is good. It works. Um, and in this one, they decided, like I say, well, we got to show the shark. We got to show the shark, but they didn't learn how to make a good shark.
No, no.
They didn't learn how to make it. It looks worse than the original.
Yeah, that's the part that I was really confused about. Like, how do you go 3, 4 years into the future and then like you make something that looks like
It looks
worse?
worse.
Yeah,
Uh, and they show it a lot.
and they show it constantly. And I think the thing that made it look like so much worse was when it gets burnt, and there's the big scar. Like
Yeah.
that. That whole thing just somehow or another made it look even more fake. Like
Yeah.
just the fact that it had that, and that didn't even look real. Because I don't know how you really design something like that to be underwater, but that kind of like makeup or whatever they had to do to it just didn't. It didn't look real either. Um, so some other observations though. Um, Scheider can't carry a movie. I don't know if it maybe was because he was just so miserable about making this movie, but it's one of the most boring performances. I mean, it's just so just there. There's nothing
Yeah.
about it that like stands out. Like I don't know. I can't remember anything he does in that movie. I'll forget like every line that he has, everything that he does. Probably within the next couple of days. All the land stuff is boring as hell. Anything that takes place on land in this movie is boring as hell. Like when they're doing the gala and the shit with him and his wife and they're having trouble and stuff like that. You just want to just sink into your couch. And then like I said, there's a clear like beat to it with the chief warns the mayor. Mayor doesn't believe him. He gets drunk. He worries about Mike. He worries about Mike's safety. It's like every single thing they hit, leading up to the end of the film.
Well, and like you say, just as an actor having to be in this movie and just try to hit the same beats, tell the same story, but not have anybody to bounce it off of, like Roy Scheider and Quint, having a character that's comparable to Brody and to balance scenes with, and to have
Yeah.
and to have somebody to play with on screen. It's just all him, all by himself, basically, and basically just trying to tell the same story of here's another shark. Here's another shark. We got to deal with this shark. You got to deal with
I
another
mean,
shark.
that's exactly. It's just like you
Yeah.
could just literally feel that they were just like, we got to find like a way to get another shark out there and just have them do the same shit like from the first film.
And I guess when was it? The original came out in '75. When did Jaws 2 come out?
78.
'78.
So yeah,
And I guess it's just, I don't know what the mentality was, other than just, well, they like this with the original, they'll like it again. So,
yes, we'll give it to him. Yeah, but the thing about it was too is that Scheider was great in the first one because he was kind of the straight man.
yeah,
fucking, Quint was the crazy one, and Hooper was the eccentric one, and he was
Right.
the straight, sheriff guy. But in this one, you can't just be the straight guy. You have to have some charisma to
Yeah.
carry this movie, and he just doesn't have it. I don't know if that's maybe because the character didn't have it, but he doesn't have it in this movie.
Well, like I say, he was a really good actor. He could be really good, you know.
Yes.
Um, and has made some excellent movies besides just Jaws. But he was hamstrung in this one, and the performance shows.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you
really,
could you almost feel like he had a gun to his head, like after he walked off camera. He's just like, "You're gonna finish this movie," like it's just the way that it felt.
yeah.
Okay, here's some comments though. Let's see. Scott says he saw Jaws 2 before he saw Jaws 1, and here's the thing: Jaws 2 was on TV a ton, like as opposed to the original Jaws too. And this is what
I
Apollo said.
remember by the time Jaws 2 came out, HBO was showing the original Jaws. And because I saw the original Jaws at the Omea Theater in 1975, I was
Jesus,
9 years old or 10 years old. And that was the first movie I actually had to stand in line to see. And
guarantee it. Yeah,
and everyone stood up and cheered at the end when the shark was blown up, and it was just like I say, it's my favorite movie. Period. And in this one, it's just it was something to see, something to see on a Saturday evening or whatever. Uh,
yeah. I mean, I feel
walked
like
out, forgot it pretty much as soon as you saw it, except for that ending.
we were talking about like last time about Jaws and being like one of the huge kind of. There's really like three to me. I don't know, Jay. You could probably add on to this though. Like three, what you would call like blockbuster movies to come out of the '70s, right? To me, it was The Exorcist, it was Jaws, and it was Star Wars. I mean, those were the ones where it's like people like lined up, around the corners to see them.
Well, in the case of The Exorcist, I mean, the audience was more. Uh, it was rated R, of course, so not everyone could go see The Exorcist, but everyone could go see Jaws. And wasn't that Jaws pretty much the first blockbuster film, the one that established the summer movie, the summer
Yes,
blockbuster?
yes,
It set the stage for that. It sort of much invented that. And of course, uh, a couple of years later, a couple of Star Wars, but Jaws was the first. I remember I was in Ross Elementary, 9 years old, I believe, when that movie came out. I had already read the book, paperback, uh, before I saw the movie. I'd read the book, and when the book was just, scared me to death. The descriptions of the shark eating,
yeah.
the girl at the beginning and all that. The way it was described, um, and and saw it with my sister, my big sister. She's 9 years older. Took me to see Jaws with her girlfriend, and they were sitting on either side of me, and I was squeezing their hands the whole movie, watching it, and uh, and really just, there's movies you watch, and after you see it, you feel something in you has changed, something new has happened. It's kind of hard to describe, and Jaws was one of those movies. Probably the first movie that I walked out of the movie feeling like I've seen something different, and I feel different. Um, I've never seen anything like this before, and uh, you know, there's movies throughout your life that you feel that way after you see it. Oh, I did this is breaks new ground or whatever. You don't really have the term for that when you're 9 years old, but Jaws was that, I guess, the first movie I can remember that actually felt changed in some way when I got out of it. That I've seen something entertainment wise. I've seen something new, different. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's probably it's not as kind of classic, but I think I had the same feeling when I watched Terminator 2,
yeah.
where you were I was at the right age. I was like 12 when that movie came out, and it was just like you realized that you saw something different that nobody had ever done. They'd never done those kind of effects before or anything like that, and it was kind of like, you know,
Well, like I say, at the very end, And I'd heard that they had done this all over America at the end of the movie when the shark is blowing up. People stood up and cheered and clapped.
Yes.
And just to feel that sort of connection to the audience, you know, you're all in this together watching Jaws, you know.
Yes.
You're not by yourself seeing this movie. You're with this group of people, and you're all sort of linked together in a way watching this movie. That's another first for me is that sort of shared experience that I felt like I was part of a team, part of a group, you know, that was taking in this movie at the same time, you know, and everyone stood up at exactly the same time when that shark blew up and screamed and clapped. And I've never seen a movie like that before. We've done that. We stood up and cheered, you know, and so yeah, it was a new thing.
Did they have that reaction for Jaws 2, Jay?
No, like I say, and there was always someone cutting up in the theater and making, you know, acting the fool. But yeah, when he said, "Hey, come on," you know, he's beating on those people that had like empty cups and stuff, and "Hey, come on," I'm beating on their seats, you know, and they'd someone coming there with the damn flashlight. Hey, cut that out, you know. There was always something. It was a one horse town, you know, Mahia, Texas, and someone was always acting the fool in the Mahia theater, you know. But it really, you know, it was like, what else are you gonna do with Jaws 2 but act the fool, you know?
So I'm curious too, though. Okay, so did you end up? I hope the answer to this is yes. Did you end up seeing Jaws 3 in the theater?
I see. Now here's my thing. I'm half blind. My left eye, I see the shapes and colors. So I can't technically see in 3D, but I didn't know that at the time when I saw Jaws 3.
Yeah.
I learned, and it was that. Those glasses that were kind of like they were sort of gray. What did you call that kind of those kind of 3D glasses? They were kind of shaded.
Wes will know the answer to this if he's on here. He knows all about the 3D.
But the effect really didn't work for me. The 3D effects. But I saw it in Waco, Texas, a little twin theater up there. Same place I saw E.T. I can't remember the name of it. But saw Jaws 3. My parents were going to go to the mall and do some shopping, so they dumped me off at Jaws 3. And
that was back when parents did shit like that.
I saw it by myself. And the 3D effects didn't work for me. I got a headache. You know, I knew what they were trying to do whenever they do a 3D effect. I knew they're trying to do, you know, I knew what was supposed to happen. Like I said, at one point, the shark's jaw is like floating towards the screen or something. When isn't it blowing up or something? I forget how the shark is killed.
This is another reason why I can't wait to watch it again, because I can't remember how the thing dies at the end. I just remember this scene. There's a scene where there's like all these people walking through this tube, like this glass tube that's just in this underwater kind of like structure or whatever. And they're looking, and then you see the shark turn and like start coming towards the screen, and it's in 3D, you know, at that point, like, and it's swimming towards, and then it hits the side of the tank or whatever, the window, and cracks it, and then eventually causes it to explode.
And it's like supposed to explode out towards
the
audience. Yeah.
I do remember that, but I have no recollection of what the hell happens to the shark, like, or anything. Like
and then one of Brody's kids gets killed, don't he? In Jaws 3, don't he get eat up?
That's in 4.
Is that in 4?
That's in 4. Yeah, that's in the Revenge. Like, honestly, 3 is probably the one that I know the least about too, because I've probably watched it maybe one time, and like
I don't remember, but I do remember there's something like an undersea laboratory or something.
Yeah,
I remember that. But all I got was a headache with Jaws 3 because I couldn't. The 3D effects didn't work for me. But at the time I didn't know that. I thought it wouldn't. But I learned, through research later that 3D is actually an effect where you have pretty much equal vision in both eyes, and that's how you merge the images in your brain. And that doesn't work for me because I'm basically blind in my left eye. So, oh well. But yeah, and I had no expectations of it being even fairly good at the time. It was just to pass the time. I didn't want to fart around with my parents and follow them around.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what else to see, so I just saw Jaws 3D. But yeah, I don't remember anything about it.
So Carolina Chupacabra, though, says that they're called polarized lenses.
Polarized, that's the word. Yeah,
Yeah.
polarized. Yeah.
So I knew somebody would know. And then MacBoy Color wants to tell you that he really enjoyed your film. She made a monster. Great job to everyone, Jay.
Well, thank you, thank you. I'll tell you something to sort of jump ahead.
Yeah.
The only time I ever saw 3 movies in a row with my best friend Barry Martin, we went to Corsicana, Texas. We saw Superman 4: The Quest for Peace,
God.
Jaws: The Revenge, and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Back to back to back, with a
Wow.
trip to Jack in the Box to get a burger between the first 2 films. And
Okay.
only
So,
time I ever saw 3 films in a row. I saw
so
2 of the worst films ever made, and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
I was going to ask, like at that point in your life, did you realize that those were 2 of the worst like
And
sequels?
it's fun. You know, that was a time in my life where it was kind of fun to see some bad movies.
Yeah.
Where it was kind of a Mystery Science 3000 kind of thing, where we would laugh at the film and make cracks and make jokes as we were watching it, you know. So we had fun with Superman 4, and we had a blast with Jaws of Revenge. Oh my God. You know, the whole point of view, the shark, like, was supposed to be sticking his head out of the water and looking around, see the lead shot, you know, like it's scanning the area, you know, and going after Lorraine. Was it Lorraine Gary? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Going after her personally, traveling half the world, you know,
Into the Bahamas. Into
know,
the fucking Bahamas to
yeah.
get her on vacation. Yeah.
Because one of his brothers or sisters or whatever, his brother's killed or whatever, he's going to get revenge on her. And and Michael Caine, good Lord, one of the best actors alive. Michael Caine's in this movie.
He does have the best scene in the movie though, where he gets out of the plane and the shark is like there, and he goes, "Oh shit!" and he gets back in the plane.
But yeah, we had probably one of the best times at a theater watching movies that day. Is seeing those 2 movies, you know, the Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, you know, and then seeing Jaws, but Jaws Revenge in particular, we just loved that. I mean, because it was so terrible, but so hilariously bad.
Yes,
So
it
funny
really was.
bad.
I can't wait to get to that one. That's that's kind of the gold standard for horrible
And
sequels.
but there's movies that we'd rent them on we'd rent Jaws Revenge on VHS to watch it and laugh at it and joke with it. And another movie we would do that with was Death Wish 3.
Oh, I love Death Wish 3.
Oh,
is that
Death
the
Wish
one?
3.
Wait a minute. Is that the one with the guy with the mohawk and the bazooka at the end? Because if
And
it is,
what is the line? And what is the character named the Giggler? He killed the Giggler, man. He killed the Giggler. And he's like distraught and he's like apoplectic because the Giggler's been killed.
Giggler got killed.
He killed the Giggler, man.
And he's got the special, like, what is, like a 44 or something, like a gun.
He's got a name for it, the Wilby or something like that. He's got a name.
That's right, yeah.
You know, and it's like shipped to him. You know, my friend's here. My friend, whatever the gun's name is, my friend's here. You know, and
it comes in like a wooden box
or something. Case,
yeah.
It's like embossed or something, and it's
I remember being infatuated with the end of that movie though, where like he blows the entire building up with the bazooka just to kill that guy. Like just watching that like over and over and over again.
I've actually got that. I think I've got two and three on like as a double pack, you know, of that. And every now and then I'll break out Death Wish 3 just to watch it. It's one of my favorite, you know, of that kind of movie. Just.
Yeah, it's hilariously shitty and great at the same time.
But Jaws 4 is one of the best worst. As far as just having fun with a terrible movie.
I think that those two are two of the best worst, honestly. Superman 4 with the fucking sun god guy or whatever. And then there's a scene, I swear I kind of remember this. I hope that this is right. Is there a scene in that movie, or is that in part 2? Which movie is it where he takes off his ass and like throws it at somebody?
It and it's like it wraps itself.
Yes, it like wraps around him.
I don't know. I almost want to say that was 2. I think
that might have been 2. Yeah, 2. I might be getting those confused.
But yeah, in 4, and of course, you know, what is it? But that, you know, Cannon took over for 4.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, the cheesy movies they'd make was that Golden and Globus, and just and you feel bad, in a way you felt bad for Christopher Reeve. I liked Superman 2. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was too bad.
Oh, I love Superman too. Yeah.
But Superman 3 with Richard Pryor, and you can just see it going downhill. But then once Cannon Group took over for just when I heard that it had gone to that company, and I said, "Oh God, well, we got to see this." And but yeah, that I don't even know if we intended to see 3 in a row that day, but we just after seeing Superman 4, and I said, "Well," and I had seen Siskel and Ebert's review of Jaws 4. I already had seen that, and they had talked about how funny it was, the point of view shots of the shark, and just the whole premise of it, and Michael Caine, and all that. Well, we got to see Jaws 4. So that was one we were definitely going to see, but I think because of the way the movie times went, we saw Superman 4 first, and then we wound up at Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. What the fuck? So let's
nothing about Jaws 4 really makes any sense. Like nothing. The casting, the plot, it doesn't, none of it really makes a lick of sense. But it's a great movie.
Well, when you talk about how poor Roy Scheider had to carry Jaws 2 by himself, pretty much, then poor Lorraine Gary's got to carry Jaws: The Revenge. Pretty much a side character in the first 2 films.
Yeah,
has to carry this movie. And like how they got Michael Caine, I have no idea. I can't believe it's the script that brought him in. I guess. Dollars. The old. He had a mortgage to pay for, or a Ferrari to pay for, or something.
Well, there's a quote that's like one of the most famous quotes where it said somebody asked him about Jaws 4, something about it, and he said, I don't remember anything about it other than it bought me a house. So that's like the only, So, okay, some things about Jaws 2 real quick. So I was talking earlier, though, it made $200 million, which is insane to think about because it's really not that great of a movie. But that's how popular movies were back then. Jaws 2 made $200 million on a budget of $20 million. And as far as home media releases, it was released in 1980 on MCA Home Video and VHS, Betamax, and then on DVD in 2001 for a special edition, which included a 45-minute documentary. It also contains some deleted scenes, including some new shit with the mayor, it looks like, too. So, it has a 61% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is about right. I mean, to me, that movie is a 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's completely average.
Yeah.
It really is. But, I kind of, Jaws was the great one. And Jaws 2 was just, to me, kind of like their one. I'm really looking forward to getting into the really shitty ones, because I know that starts with Jaws 3 and culminates with Jaws 4 and then Cruel Jaws. I'm doing
which
that.
I've never seen. I've never seen that.
Oh, God. Just imagine, like, Jaws 4 if Italians made it, and that's basically, like, what it is.
But, I mean, that's the case of most sequels to blockbuster films. They might be okay. They might be all right, but they very rarely are as good or better than the original. Almost never happen.
Yeah.
I mean, Empire Strikes Back. That's the only thing that comes to mind.
Well, I think
but really, I don't even see Empire Strikes Back as a sequel. It's just part of a ongoing story.
Right.
So I don't see that as part 2. Empire Strikes Back wasn't part 2. It was, but it's part of an ongoing story. But in the case of most sequels, they're just like Jaws 2, just basically trying to hit the same beats as what made the first movie famous.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. And Scott on here makes a good point. He says in 1978, people could either go and watch Jaws 2 or stay home and watch the Fawns. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot, there wasn't as much home entertainment as there is now, for sure. I'll say
Yeah.
that. Uh, but yeah, I mean, Jaws 2 is it's, like you said, it's a serviceable enough film. I kind of look forward to getting into the more crazy shit because this one's kind of solid and average. So
Yeah.
there is that. And I don't remember a damn thing about Jaws 3, so that's going to be fun too. Oh, speaking of like sequels though, you were talking about sequels never generally being. I think there's some sequels though that over time, like Superman 2 is a perfect example. Over time, people look at Superman 2 as kind of being a classic now. And, you know, Jaws 2, nobody looks at Jaws 2 as being a classic. It's just not. It
And you
didn't.
know, me being as old as I am, like, Raiders of the Lost Ark, that definitely is in my top 10 films, as being just pretty much perfect from beginning to end, and its construction and just the way that it's shot and the acting and everything. So when Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom came out, everyone had to see that, and of course I saw it, and I thought, this is okay, but I think I was a junior in high school when I saw that, and I thought, this it doesn't measure up. But everybody, all my friends, just thought it was just fantastic. Temple of Doom was just great. And you look at people now that consider Temple of Doom to be the classic film
Yeah.
in the Indiana Jones archive. They think Temple of Doom is probably the best film, which I don't think it's anywhere near it. I tried to watch it recently and got about halfway through it and had to quit.
Yeah.
What's her
I
name?
don't.
What's the chick's name in that movie? I cannot stand her.
Oh,
Steven Spielberg married her.
his wife, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
What's her
God,
name?
Jay.
But she's screaming and she's wincing and she's through that whole movie, and I just want to just reach to the scream and strangle her. I cannot stand that woman in that movie. And Short Round is like an Asian stereotype.
Listen.
And,
If there's one thing out of that movie
uh,
that it has to be Short Round. Just
you
that
couldn't
character.
get away with Short Round these days.
No.
They run you out on a rail.
Well, you couldn't even get away. You couldn't even get away with him, his Data character in the Goonies nowadays. Like they wouldn't do that shit now.
And it just turned what was so great in sort of an homage to the old serial films. They turned Indiana Jones into a cartoon. Temple of Doom is basically it's a cartoon. It's a live action cartoon. It's over the top. It's silly. It doesn't measure up. What I thought was so great about the original, but there's like you had mentioned, there's cases where there's some people that consider the sequel to be the better film, and I think it's because of the time that they saw it. They saw it as a kid.
Yes.
There's people that saw Temple of Doom, and they were at that age I was when I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, at 12, 13 years old. That they were that age when they saw Temple of Doom, 3 or 4 years later, whenever that came out, So they see that as the great film. There's people that think The Phantom Menace is a great film because they saw it when they were a kid.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Because now you're getting this kind of like new wave of the generation, that's ahead of mine, where that's the kind of shit that they think is. And it just blows my mind. Like when they talk about the prequels being these great movies, I'm just like.
But I mean, you can kind of understand that.
Yeah, I can understand it.
The time that they saw it in that very, the time in their lives where everything is you take in things differently when you're a kid,
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you see The Phantom Menace it is a 12-year-old or 11-year-old or whatever, you think this is, a great Star Wars movie. This is, so you kind of understand it, but
here's the thing, though. There's some movies where even when I was a kid, I knew they were shit. Like Howard the Duck.
Yeah,
Like
Howard, I saw that in the theater.
I watched Howard the Duck when I was probably about 6 or 7 years old, and I knew even then It was a piece of shit. The Garbage Pail Kids movie, I saw that when I was probably like 8 or 9. Knew it was like shit. So I mean, there's got to be some where people are just like, even if you see it at a particular age, you know
Yeah.
it's trash. But I agree with you completely on like the idea, like Temple of Doom. I saw that first. I'm pretty sure. Like I don't think I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark first because Temple of Doom came around when I was. What year did that come out?
It's like 80, 81 or something, wasn't it? I mean,
Oh, it had to be later than that.
was it? I don't
I
know.
wish somebody on here.
82. I honestly don't
Anyway,
know. So
I
to
was
Google it now.
I was old enough to be at kind of a perfect age to watch
Yeah.
that movie. But
And there's
Raiders,
some things I like about it. I like the mine chase, and there's there's sequences I like about it. But just overall, I just thought they turned it into a made it very cartoonish and just silly, and the villains were so overwrought.
yeah. I mean, looking back on it now, it's fucking ridiculous. The guy
The
that's like,
villains are like something out of wrestling. They're
the guy with his head painted is like jum jum jabah jum jum jabah jum jum jabah. It's like the heart
ripping the heart
bursting.
out and the heart
Yeah.
beating and catching on fire, and uh, and I can see if you see that as a kid that this is going to be, oh man, this is something, but I saw that.
Looking back on that now though, even though I saw that when I was a kid, I think that the Last Crusade was probably better than the Temple of Doom, and of course Raiders of the Lost Ark is better than all of them. But I mean, I think it would go like 1, 3, 2 in that
Yeah.
case. It's just a better constructed movie.
Well,
Really.
it's just movies that during that time period, to go in and seeing Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when it came out, going to the theater and seeing it. Seeing movies first run that people consider classics now, being just taking those movies in when they were new. That's because I'm old. But I grew up. I really like the time I grew up. I was telling Wes this, that I like the time period I grew up. That by the time I got to where I was in middle school and getting a little older, and then that's when things like Alien came out and The Thing, and seeing those first run in the theater, and just like, oh shit,
Oh yeah.
not knowing the chest burster thing was going to happen in Alien, not having a hint that was going to happen, and so you're there and you're taking that in when that's happening, seeing those kind of moments firsthand. Instead of, oh, did you hear that? You heard this happen? And, you being, by the time most people see Alien, they know that it's going to happen. Even if they've never seen the movie, they've seen that scene, or
Yeah.
so don't get that sort of firsthand, taking that in for the first time. But there's so many movies like, I mentioned Temple of Doom. I mean, Empire Strikes Back. I didn't know, no, I'm your father. I didn't know that was going to happen. And oh shit,
Mhm.
Taking those sort of moments in firsthand was very cool. It grew up at just the right time, I think, when movies were there were still new things happening. There was still new ground being broken, like with Jaws and Star Wars and the Star Wars sequels, and new special effects were being invented, and new ways to tell a story. There was still something fresh and new happening in the late 70s and early 80s, and then through the 80s and such, so it wouldn't just, now everything's retro, so
Well, and I agree too, because I've always thought, well, not always, but for a long time now, I've thought that the 70s were probably the greatest decade of film.
yeah.
Just because that was when the studios actually just would take chances on directors. They would just, they would find these directors that they, were the hot new kind of thing going, and they would give them money to make whatever the fuck that they wanted to make. And that's where you got a lot of this stuff that people idolize today, and that just does not happen anymore at all. Like that idea is completely gone now.
Well, and you bringing that up, go back and I've got this somewhere on DVD. Go back and watch Duel by Spielberg, a TV movie, about the truck driving old Dennis Weaver crazy. You know,
Yeah, that was a
um,
great movie. Made for
and
TV.
watch that film, and you see the hallmark of Jaws. You see points in that film. He even used part of the sound when the truck is going over the cliff. He used that when the shark is blown up, that kind of sort of
Yeah,
roar. He used that same effect from Duel in Jaws. Kind of an homage. Most people didn't get it, but he put that in that film, put it in Jaws. But you and watch Duel, and you'll see the hallmark of a great director, and action, and just the way he cut the film, and the way that he filmed it and shot it and directed it. You see little bits and pieces of Jaws being formed, in that film. Uh, and I love Duel. I mean, that's another one that I'll bring out of the closet, every year or two and watch Duel.
yeah, I do too. It's a
Like you say,
great.
taking chances with directors, and because Spielberg had done TV stuff and done like the Night Gallery thing and things like that. Uh, Giving him, which even at the time must have been a big deal, Jaws, because the book was so popular. Um, it must have been a big deal to give him that film to direct, even at the time, um, because it was this blockbuster book that they were turning into a movie. So it must have been a big deal to him even back then.
Yeah, and I mean, if I take out like the horror movies from the '70s, right, and we're just to concentrate on like what are the movies that came out of the '70s, I mean, it's all the biggest kind of like blockbuster kind of movies that you reference nowadays, The Godfather, and the Star Wars movies. And well, at least the first Star Wars. I think the second one came out in '80, but close enough. And all of the shit that Scorsese did, it's like all that started in the '70s. So
And some of them, in comedy, and something like Mel Brooks and Blazing Saddles, and just uh, what are considered classics now that came out in the '70s. This uh, too numerous to mention. Some just great films that came out during that time period.
yeah, but sequels were relatively kind of new in the '70s, and I kind of can see why.
Yeah,
Like some of these sequels, Godfather 2 might be the only sequel during that era that was really really worthwhile. I'm not
yeah.
sure.
And which is another film that I kind of see as sort of a continuation of the story. It actually furthered the story. It didn't just, it, uh, it well, like with something like Jaws 2, did you just hit the same beats or something like that? Basically, just retelling the same story. This actually continues the story of the Corleone family, and goes back to the past and showing the early days of the Marlon Brando's character, with and then continuing from the first movie too, kind of telling those two stories, and which was kind of a new idea too at the time, I think. Uh, Sort of bridge the past and the present together.
Yeah, which yeah, you're right. That didn't really happen at all in that time period.
And like, and then that's another case of being inventive and trying something new and being, trying something unique and breaking new ground and that kind of thing. Those things were still happening in the '70s. Uh,
Yeah, and then I grew up in the '80s, and I
and it was
think
still happening in the '80s too. But
yeah, I think that it kind of got taken over by like a couple of different people. You had Spielberg and Lucas and like
you mentioned Scorsese and
Scorsese. Yeah, a couple of people. And so maybe weren't as many opportunities in the '80s as there were in the '70s for directors and that. But to me, the '80s are like that's when the blockbusters really kind of took over. Like that's when you got like Back to the Futures and all those movies that they just made Ghostbusters made hundreds of millions of dollars and yeah, and that whole kind of popcorn movie era took over.
oh yeah, and I love. I mean, I had a great time in the '80s too. And of course, that was a Ghostbusters and Gremlins, and oh God, I could get started. We could go on for hours about the '80s too. But some great films, during that time too. Poltergeist. I mean,
Oh yeah,
oh
yeah.
man, that was a movie to see in the theater. Poltergeist. People now are seeing it on their telephones. That's not the way to watch Poltergeist. You need to see
No.
Poltergeist on the big screen, and I got to see Poltergeist on the big screen. So, uh, but but yeah, uh,
But
and
Spielberg,
and I
Spielberg was good.
remember even back then, is my friend Mark Sawyer. He was the cameraman on my movie Dawn,
Yeah.
and he passed away in 2010. But anyway, I went to see Poltergeist with him, and I remember him mumbling to me, "Toby Hooper did not direct this movie." And I'm like, "What?" Is going to go. And this before I even had seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I didn't see that until like the mid '80s. And I'd mentioned Corsicana was where I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But he said, the man that's supposed to have directed this movie, he did not direct this movie. I can promise you. And so that was, and so that was the first time that I'd actually heard that concept that Toby Hooper didn't direct Poltergeist. But after seeing the movie, I was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know who Toby Hooper was, because I hadn't seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I don't know if I had seen like a Fun House or I think this is before Salem's Lot had came out, or I wasn't sure. Had Salem's Lot came out yet? I'm not sure. But
Sounds
anyway,
like
I
when
didn't
the
really
hell
have
did
an
that come
idea
out?
who Toby Hooper was, but he did. Mark did, and so he told yeah, he didn't direct this movie. And
Well,
so
if you look at everything that Toby Hooper directed, and none of it looks like Poltergeist.
and then watch
Like,
Poltergeist, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's not like that. I'll say
Yeah.
that for certain.
Well, and
Oh,
you just see the just like at the beginning of the movie when he's riding on the bicycle and he's got the beers that's spewing and all that, and that's just right out of a Spielberg movie. That whole
yeah,
sequence, the way that it's follows him, and it's like that's Spielberg all the hell and back. That is not anybody but Steven Spielberg directing that, at least that sequence. And a lot of those beats in the movie are just right out of a Spielberg film. You just see that's got to be Steven Spielberg has directed that. Uh, you know, and like I say, yeah, we go watch the Fun House or whatever, and then watch that and
that's
say,
what. Yeah, that's the movie that came to mind. Like even if you took out Texas Chainsaw, if you watch like the Fun House and then Life Force and shit like
yeah.
that, like that's
Which
not.
I like Life Force, I like Fun House, I enjoy those films, but I know when I'm watching Poltergeist that's not the guy that directed that. uh,
Yeah. So
he might have been
what?
on set, maybe.
I mean,
Uh, yeah.
Spielberg didn't have a whole lot to do with Jaws too, but I'm just curious, like, what is your opinion on Spielberg? Like in terms of his
Oh yeah,
films from
well,
the
like I
80s?
say, being the age I was, Spielberg was my man. I mean, I thought he was like a godlike figure, because just watching, uh, uh, of course, Jaws being my all-time favorite movie, so he's probably going to be my all-time favorite director. Um, you know, and there's probably directors that I think are more respectable and probably make better movies. He mentioned Scorsese um, but that at least at the time you would watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind and like say even far back as watching Duel and watching Jaws and watching Raiders of the Lost Ark. Um, just the way he visualized the story, the way he put the story on film. Uh, just that kid in Close Encounters of the Third Kind opening up that door and that radiant light, and just that shot, it just sends chills down my spine every time I see it. Um, the way he could construct a scene uh, was just there was nobody better. No one, at least at my age when I was growing up, he was the best there was. You know, um,
Yeah, I think that he probably doesn't get as much credit as he deserves because there was stuff going on in his movies that nobody really was aware of. In terms of like he was doing subtle things like with characters and lighting and cinematography in those movies that nobody even really knew about that made a difference to the movie. And Jaws is a perfect example of that, where he always, in the movie, Scheider's character would always kind of be off to himself, and the other two would kind of be in the same shot together. Scheider would always be like really dimly lit, and the other two would be brightly lit. So, like, I mean, he's doing all this kind of
Well,
stuff that.
another thing he would do, and particularly in them early films like Jaws and Close Encounters and Raiders of the Lost Ark, is there'd be a bunch of people talking at the same time. And someone will be talking like in the background, saying, mumbling a little something, and you want to listen and hear what they're saying, and it's something that's actually relevant to the plot of the movie or relevant to the scene. But who's the guy that filmed MASH and Popeye and all that? What was it? Robert Altman. He would do that.
Yeah.
His characters would he'd have a lot of characters talking at the same time, which ordinarily you think would be confusing. You wouldn't know what's going on, but he knew a way to construct it where it worked, where there's a bunch of people talking at the same time, but you understand what they're saying, and you're actually interested in what they're saying, and it actually improves the shot. And Spielberg was real good at that, particularly in them earlier films,
Well, there was a really famous story too that kind of blew my mind. That the only reason that Spielberg did that scene where there's the mayor and Brody talking, and they're on that in the original Jaws, and they're on that what's the thing, like the boat that carries the cars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the only reason he did that was just to have something going on, because the dialogue was so boring that if they were just standing there, it would, like, people would kind of zone out. But if there's some shit going on, like that boat's moving, and like carrying all that stuff, that people would more kind of focus on the scene. And I thought that's genius, to have something kind of going on in the boring dialogue scenes that pushed it along.
And like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I think this was an idea that just came up on set when the guy is like, he's throwing them swords around.
Oh yeah.
There's a board that shoots him, and that's a classic shot. That's just something that you consider a classic moment in a movie. And I think that's just something that just came up on set. That I don't know if it was Spielberg's idea or whose idea it was. It might have been Harrison Ford's idea. But yeah, let's do that, and it turns out to be one of the most fantastic shots in a movie, period.
Yeah, one of the most memorable scenes in the whole movie, if not the most memorable.
And but he was always coming up with things like that, and like I say, little subtle stuff that most people wouldn't notice, but if it was gone, you would notice it.
Yes.
If it wasn't there, you would say, well, I remember this happening, But so it's something that you don't so much pick up on as being relevant as you're watching it, but it makes you can watch movies. Like I said, I can watch Jaws right now. If you were to play Jaws, I'd sit there and watch the whole film. It makes films, particularly Spielberg films, rewatchable. I mean, I can watch Raiders of the Lost Ark or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I can at least once a year. I can watch any of those things, and not be bored, and actually usually find something new that I didn't notice the first 100 times I watched it.
Well, I think that, and I've said this last time too, that Jaws is just a movie for me that, like, anytime it's on, if it comes on TV and I happen to be like passing by it, like, I have to watch it. Like, it's just one of those movies, like, where you can pick it up at any point in that movie and watch it, and it's just it just never gets old or uninteresting or anything like that.
And I mean, it's this guy like say, well, I'll just keep saying it's my favorite movie, period. And just moments in that movie, and of course that whole Indianapolis story,
Yeah.
It's the way that comes about in the movie, where they're training scars, look at this, I got this and all that, and then he says, oh, that's a tattoo, I had that removed, and well, Hooper, that's the Indianapolis, and you were in a hit, and then that music comes in, that's that John Williams score comes in, underneath it, and he takes his time with that scene, tells it slowly, and it just unfolds, him telling that Indianapolis story, and I get chills every time. I just like, oh man, this is just perfect filmmaking right here, and perfect acting and just everything.
It's such a
Just a
great.
perfect moment.
It is like if there was ever a perfect scene in a movie, that would probably
Yeah.
be it. Just
It's
that
a
whole.
perfect moment in film
Yes.
that any day you want to play that scene to me, I'll watch.
Yeah, exactly. It never ever gets old. It's always interesting.
And it just the way that it comes in the film, it's like, they're kidding around, and then here comes this scene, and it just, like I say, it's slow. It takes its time, and the way he unfolds what's happened, and his acting in that is just, I mean, you know, everything about that scene, the music and just the camera work and everything is just perfect. Uh, and there are just a few movies that have a scene like that it's just like, uh, perfection.
I think that I could probably, like you said, watch that scene any time of the day, 100 times. Like, it's just, that's just like one of the greatest scenes ever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's no scene like that in Jaws 2. There's no scene
Well,
like that.
well, here we are. This is what your original podcast or whatever this is supposed to be was supposed to be about, and we.
Well, see, I brought it all the way back around though, because there is nothing in Jaws 2 that is memorable like that speech.
No,
There's nothing at all.
and like I said, it's serviceable. It's um, but but and I'm trying to remember other movies that came out during that same year, during that same time period.
Somebody said that Grease was the biggest movie of '78. Said it made like $350 million.
Oh yeah, and I saw
like,
that. I saw that in the theater.
Yeah.
I like Grease. I have the sound. I still have the soundtrack on vinyl, and I got Grease. I got the soundtrack to Grease at the Mahias Safeway. And there's a grocery store called Safeway. I don't know if you remember Safeway. There ever was a Safeway in your area, but we had a grocery store called Safeway, and they sold vinyl albums. That's where I got the Blues Brothers album, and that's where I got Jaws, and that's where I got the Star Wars soundtrack, and that's where I got Grease. And but yeah, and much of those I still have. I think I still have my original Grease. The double album, but
I can't believe Grease made $350 million though. Like, I cannot fathom that. Like, I like Grease and everything, okay, but it must have just been a different time period. Like, that movie made that much money, because that's insane.
well, and like I say, in the case of Jaws, that sort of set the groundwork for the summer movie, where when summer came around, everyone flocked to the theater to see, to see films. That was what you did. You went to go see a movie and during the summer. And Jaws kind of set the standard for the big blockbuster films and all that. So that was what they were out to do, I guess, to draw in the audience, with either a sequel or some kind of, in case of Grease, a musical or something like that, or Saturday Night Fever, or, um, and
Something, yeah. Grease is definitely not the word, Mayor. I mean, Grease is fine. It's just not like $350 million fine in 1978. In 1978 money, that's an insane amount. So, I want to thank you, Jay, for coming on here.
Well, I'm
taking
sorry
the time.
to divert your attention away from Jaws 2 so far.
Well, no, I mean, after a certain point, you run out of shit to talk about Jaws 2, because there's really not a whole hell of a lot that goes on in Jaws 2, really. Like, after, once it gets to the end sequence, there's about 3 or 4 things that happen. But Jaws 2 is no Jaws. I'll say that. It's a 5 out of 10 movie. It's an average movie.
Yeah.
I think anybody that sees it, you may like it, but it's just kind of there.
Yeah.
It's not really.
That's a good description. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
So, next Monday at 10, I'll be doing Jaws 3D. I haven't seen Jaws 3D in however long it's been, probably since Jaws 3D came out, or around maybe a little bit after that.
Did they
But
ever put that out in a format where you could actually watch it in 3D?
I was wondering about that too, actually, and I was hoping to do some research on it because I'm not sure that they have. Like, I don't remember them putting out a really good edition of Jaws 3. Like, I remember them putting out an amazing edition of Jaws, but like, is the sequels?
I've got that. I've got you. I don't
Yeah.
have a 4K TV. I hope to get one here before the year is out. But I've got that that remastered Blu-ray that came out a couple of years ago. That's great. That they actually did a 4K restoration of it. And
Yeah,
looks fantastic.
but I mean, that's a good question. I would love to see if I could get like Jaws 3D in the original, with the glasses and all that shit to try to watch it. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to just watching it again anyway. No, so Wes says the Blu-ray 3D is out. Okay, so there you go. Did not know that. It said, but somebody else says it's not very impressive. So who knows? But anyway, we're gonna get to Jaws 3 next week. Jay, I know you did a recent like MWO with CKO there.
Yes.
And that's up right now too, where you talk about your new film. Anything that you want to plug?
I don't know about plug. I mean, that's basically what's going on. Is that little short film I made? She Made a Monster, which basically the title's kind of on the nose, but that's basically what it's about. It's about a kid that invents a teleportation machine, and she accidentally transports a movie dinosaur into the real world, and it's stomping around, and they're trying to figure out how to deal with this situation. It's funny, I guess. It's lighthearted, kind of cartoonish, but I've been getting some good reaction from it. A couple of good reviews up, and so that's kind of what I'm promoting, entering it in some festivals and seeing if they're going to be, get into some festivals and such. Every couple of years, I want to do a little something like that, just a little, short film, a little project like that. Found a good cast with this one, and we all had fun with it, and so just trying to get that out there and the festival circuit, so to speak. I'm kind of new to that, so see what happens with it. But yeah, that's about the only thing I've got going on is that.
That's awesome though, Jay. I look forward to seeing it. I know that
Well, if there's you said that you're on Instagram.
I'm on the same one with CK on Into the Dead Pit. That's
What
the
I
one
can do,
got.
I've got it on YouTube, but it's unlisted, so I don't have it where you can just search it. But
Yeah.
I can send a link to you if you want to watch it.
Oh yeah, send me the link. Yeah, I would love to see it.
Okay,
But I appreciate you coming on, Jay, and talking about
I enjoyed it.
the mediocrity that was Jaws 2.
Well, we barely talked about.
Yeah.
When I came in, we barely talked about Jaws.
Well, that's the thing, though. As I was saying, like we wanted to go through, the time period of sequels in the '80s, and we kind of circled around everything in between. But it was a
I
great bit
still
of
enjoyed
fun.
the conversation, though.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for coming in and watching. We've had a lot of people in here, like the whole night, which is amazing considering it's a Monday at like almost midnight. So thanks to everybody, and I guess check out the next one. Next Monday at 10 o'clock will be Jaws 3D. And I'm going to play us out with our outro. Jay, it's been great to talk to you, man. I will catch everybody later. See ya.
Give us the thumbs up,
Off you butts.
like, subscribe. And if you subscribe, here's something else you can do. Once you subscribe, you can click the bell notification, right? And it'll notify you anytime that Dead Pit puts up new shit.
Or don't. I really don't give a if you do or
I
not.
want you to. I want you to.
I don't care.
Let's keep our community growing here on YouTube.
I don't like it. I don't want you to do nothing.
Listen, they need to do that, pal.
No, don't you
Yeah.
dare touch it.
Thumbs up, subscribe, and click that bell.
For this video officially ends, Oh Curly Jaws has a message for you. Go on over to shop.deadpit.com and go look at their Teen Public store right now. You got some new shirts like the Oh Curly Jaws official t-shirt, which is brutal and badass. You got the Yummy Gummy shirt with the captain himself on the shirt. You got Uncle Bill's face on a fucking shirt. You got the Final Girl shirt. You got all these shirts over at shop.deadpit.com. Get them before they're all out, especially the new one, Bedtime's in 39. It doesn't get better than that, so go on out. Check out these shirts at shop.deadpit.com. Go look at their Team Public store. You're going to have a good old time. Get them all.
Thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. DEADPIT on Patreon.com is the only place to check out a complete archive of the old DEADPIT radio shows all the way back from 2005 on, in addition to the midweek shows and fan commentaries, exclusive podcasts, and much more. DEADPIT on Patreon.com if you're interested. Tiers start at only $1.